What is going on, Diesel Nation? We're excited to have you guys with us today on the Diesel Podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube and aren't subscribed to the Diesel Podcast, make sure and click the subscribe button and like and comment. Let us know what you think of the episode. If there's questions that we should ask on a follow-up episode, or there's a guest or topic you want us to cover, we're always checking YouTube, and that's where our podcast can be heard first. We really appreciate your support with that. On today's episode, I'm going to be chatting with Wendy from Shell, and she was on the podcast about a year and a half ago. And she's had a really interesting kind of story in her journey in the oil industry. So I wanted to have her back on to talk about some really cool things that's been going on with her career. Also ask her some questions about ROTELLA, the industry, and not even just pickup trucks, but also equipment and some of the heavy duty stuff out there. So it's going to be really cool to chat with her. Before we get to it, want to remind you guys that our friends over at Kershaw Knives have a discount code just for you guys. It's 20% off site-wide. Go to kershaw.kiausa.com. Use code DIESEL20. You get 20% off anything on the site, and they have tons of different choices no matter what your budget is, what use you might have for a knife or any of their gear, whether it's for EDC or hunting, fishing, the outdoors at the job site. We really appreciate them offering this for you guys to be able to save some money. All right, let's get to today's episode with Wendy from Shell, talking about ROTELLA, her journey in the oil industry, and a lot of other cool topics. Wendy, welcome back to the Diesel Podcast. I enjoyed our chat last year talking about Shell and oils and the oil industry in general, and it was a really cool chat, and a lot's happened since last year, so I wanted to be able to sit down and chat with you, and welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. I'm excited to be here. I love what you're doing for our industry, and your episodes are always so insightful and interesting, and so I feel honored. And you just posted yesterday about where you're at in the rankings, and that's really impressive. So even more honored to be here today. I can't even remember where we left off last time, but basically my story is that I fell into this industry, right? Totally by chance, had no path that was leading me this way. And worked for the three main Shell distributors within the Chicagoland area. So I was calling on companies. It was a B2B, business to business. So I was calling on companies of all different sizes and capacities, trying to get them to do their services in-house, or maybe they were already doing their services in-house, and then to buy from our products through our distributor, and to go that route and use social media. I feel like I had gotten pretty creative with my approach and saw a lot of success that way. And so my working with all of the Shell distributors within Chicagoland in varying capacities, I really got to know the Shell team, the brand, the products, and I fell in love with it. The first distributor I worked for had two other brands that they featured. And so I was familiar with them as well. And I still felt like Shell was the most well put together, had the clearest direction, was the most hands-on with the distributor, and wanted to help us be successful. And so that set my goal, my personal goal, to work for them directly pretty early on in my career. And I've been doing this for this is like year 9, I think. So I had this goal. I worked for 2 distributors, got poached by a third who was getting a lot of business moved over to them in Chicago. And so that gave them the opportunity to open up a location here. And I guess they saw what I was doing. And I think last time we spoke, I was just kind of getting started with them. We're in the middle of this. And so I worked for them. I built up their business here. But prior to coming on with them, or just when I was getting started with them, like a week in, someone at Shell reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we have this position opening in Chicagoland. Would you be interested in applying for it?" And it was like, yes, of course. And at this time, I think he was the head of ROTELLA Global Brands or something like that. And so I was like, "Oh my God, yes, of course. Thank you for sending this to me." But unfortunately, I just started with this company, and they were doing a lot for me to get me on board with them. And I was like, I can't do that to them. I need to see this through for a while and fulfill my promise and commitment to them. So please keep me in mind for other positions that come up, but I'm going to stick this out for now. And I did. And so 3 years with them, We were coming around to some changes. Obviously, we'll talk about what's happened in the industry over the past year with all the supply shortages and stuff. But I was just feeling like personally, I was ready for the next step, and saw that Shell had some stuff popping up in the area. It was more marketing related things. I was applying to all of them, wasn't really hearing anything, was trying to use my contacts. Hey, what's going on over there? Can you put in a good word for me? But just wasn't getting the feedback that I had hoped for. And so I started to think, like, maybe it's just not in the cards for me right now. And that's okay. I got my head around it. And I was actually approached by another major brand right at this time, who had a position open up in the Chicagoland kind of Midwest region. And the distributor for them actually that I'm acquainted with called me and was like, hey, I put your name out there or they requested you to apply for this position. And I said I would put you in contact with them. So I started this process, and this is not me speaking illy of them. They're great people, and I'm sure it would have been great to work for them. But it's just funny how the universe or bigger forces work, right? Because when I was going through this hiring process with them, it was very rigorous. It was very drawn out. I had to jump through a lot of hoops and do a lot of testing and interviewing and all this. And as time was going on, the position was getting less and less attractive. So they kept changing things on me. Certain privileges of the job were being removed. The territory was all of a sudden changed. And then finally we come around to, okay, we want to offer you the position, but oops, we forgot. Normally we have our legal team look into non-competes, because I had a non-compete with my distributor before we even do the interview. We forgot to do that with you. So we got to go through that process now, and this could take a little longer. And so while I was waiting, Shell came out of the blue and was like, hey, this position's here. We think you'd be great at it. Please apply. I applied. It was like the easy breezy. We went through it real fast. I got the offer. I got to negotiate my salary range, and it was like, bing, bang, boom, here's the offer. And it was like the perfect fit for me. And so the other one just got, kind of, it's just funny how it worked out.
Yeah.
And so I had to tell the other company, respectfully, I'm declining and I'm taking this offer with Shell, and all the best. And so it was a great opportunity. And so now, not to be long-winded here, but now what I'm doing is completely the opposite of what I was doing before. Now my full job is to promote our OEM dealers that we have contracts within my territory. So now I'm telling everybody, go back to the dealer for all your products and forget everything I told you before. But it's good, and it's a whole new challenge. Obviously, I post on social media that I'm working a lot with Case New Holland and those brands, because that's one of my large OEMs that I represent. I have 10 that I work with right now. And they are publicly okay with me sharing these things in the partnership. And so I'm talking about them quite a bit, but I don't have any experience in the ag side of things. And so my learning curve has been super steep, but it's been fun. It's a good challenge, like I said. So here I am.
Well, that was one of the main things I remember from our last episode was you were talking about your story and how you got interested in this field and then growing with it. And then 9 years, of time and investment and learning. I think there's a lot of lessons there that apply towards somebody if they want to start a diesel shop, or they want to start a manufacturing facility and make a part, or really any other industry. It could be construction, real estate, could be anything, is the patience. So how did you keep the patience, I'd say the patience and then the vision as well, because I'm sure there were challenges along the way and times you thought, is this the right place for me? Is this the right industry? When is the opportunity going to come? What really helped you during that time frame?
Sure. I couldn't expect to just be hired by Shell right out of the gate without some sort of background and experience working in this industry. And so I'm sure that happens to some, but I didn't set my expectation to be hired by them, immediately starting, once I had the idea that I wanted to be with them. So I knew that there was going to be an element of waiting around. Plus, with this particular role, if I don't want to move away from the area, if I don't want to go to Houston or that, I have to wait for a job to open up in my market. So that can take even longer. but I just kept at it. I obviously I love what I do no matter what. It was a lot of mental battling within myself that it's like, okay, I need to be grateful for the job that I have currently. I'm gonna, whatever happens, I'm gonna continue forward with it and continue acting like nothing's changing and maintain my relationships and just go full bore into that. And if something comes along, great, and I'll be ready for it and I'll get my resume ready. And but yeah, I would say just nurturing those relationships, never burning a bridge, because you never know when it's going to come back or when you're going to need that connection and a referral and things like that. And so just maintaining that vision and but learning to be grateful for what's in front of me currently. And then also being flexible to other opportunities that might come up. Maybe it's not going to fit my plan because we all have this like linear plan that we think we're going to follow, right?
Yeah.
And life doesn't work that way.
Wow.
So I thought when this other company reached out, the other major brand, I was like, man, I really don't want to represent another brand than Shell, but this would be a really good, again, learning opportunity for me, a good challenge to see how well I'm able to pivot and now put on that face and those colors and go out and go gung ho for them, and then also to learn their brand and their strategy, and then if maybe I'll fall in love with them and maybe that can be my new path, and if I don't, now I've got all that competitive info that I can bring back, to my original plan. So
I think it speaks a lot though at that point you mentioned where you had just started with a new company and the opportunity that you'd waited for and hoped for came along, but being loyal to what you had signed up for and wanting to do that job that you had, that position that you were in, I think speaks a lot to lessons that people can learn through this. And we'll get into this in a little bit as far as attracting people to the trades and bringing people in, but that part really stood out to me about what you said, and I don't think that's common these days because we all want that instant gratification, that
right.
instant promotion, that instant pay raise, that instant job offer, and it can be frustrating if people aren't used to that process of patience and waiting. But I always love to have guests on again, and like I said, your original story was really inspiring, and people reached out that weren't in oil at all. They were wanting to open their diesel shop, or they were wanting to build something, and they're like, hey, I loved what Wendy said. It made a lot of sense to me how to do this. And when I saw that you were on with Shell, I was excited. I was like pumped up, so it was really cool. With one of the things with Shell that has always stood out to me is their involvement with truck owners. Like I can see it on social media a lot, and some of the episodes that we've done is they have a genuine interest in diesel trucks and what kind of oil is going into into these vehicles that make people money. So
Yep.
the other question I was going to ask you is, as in this position, being exposed to different things, I know we had touched last time about trucks, but the agriculture side and some of these other industries you may not be familiar with, how have you approached learning about new things in this position to be able to show the solutions and the products that Shell has for people, diesel owners in a number of different fields?
Yeah. I guess to answer that latter half of your question, I always wanting to learn, right? And being someone who is happy, always learning. I never feel like I'm the expert. I need to always be open to learning and other ideas and other industries and things like that. I can always add. But a lot of it is applicable across the industries, right? Like at the end of the day, there is kind of a general science that goes into maintenance and lubricants and all of that can apply across the board. So luckily, I can take my ideas and the knowledge that I knew from the trucking and the construction side and bring that over now to the ag side to an extent, right? Like I have here's a funny example for you, and I'm going to really maybe embarrass myself by saying this, but when I first came on a few months ago, they were talking about the different product lines within the case portfolio. And one of them was a product called corn head grease. And I was like, wow, what a clever marketing idea. I'm thinking there's probably like a little corn cob guy on the label, and that's the name of the brand like that they picked out for that product. But there's actually corn heads on, the combines, the equipment that have to get greased. And so there's me not knowing something really specific about this industry and kind of making a fool of myself, right? And so asking, so I have now asked for formal training. I think that's one area internally that Shell needs to work on is better. We do have training modules that we go through, right? But a lot of it's very basic lubrication stuff or manufacturing focused. And so there's really, ag is kind of neglected, I feel like, across the board, probably for most companies. And I asked for like a formal, some sort of modules or video training or something that they can put together, or whether they call a class and we get together and sit down. And when I spoke up about this, a lot of my counterparts said the same thing. Yeah, we feel the same way. We're out here having to help these dealers and present. I've been giving like formal PowerPoint presentations to their customers on the products, but you're really winging it. It's kind of a fake it till you make it thing almost, until you can get some formal training. And but I just hands-on for me. I love getting out with the customer, actually seeing it being applied, being directly pointed out the key lubrication points and what's what. And that's how I bring it all full circle. And so actually next week I'm making, I offered up to one of my dealers that I'm going to go with them on their behalf, because we're supposed to actually dress as them when we go work with them. We're not supposed to wear our Shell colors or anything like that. And so, we're actually going to be calling on farmers together out in the field. And we're going to be, because it's harvest now, they came back and they were like, we actually have to get in the combine with this guy to get some time with him. So I'm like, oh, awesome. So then I can learn about the combine. And but yeah, so it's just really diving in and trying to immerse yourself, but otherwise kind of faking it until you make it, and you'll get there eventually.
That's one of the hardest parts when I think back of different career fields I've been in, or definitely, with the podcast, is I have this, I don't want to say narrow, but I have this knowledge base that might focus around trucks. And sometimes I'll get a request to talk about tractors or semi trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't know anything about them. I know that they take diesel, but that's about it. But it's I think wanting, like you mentioned, just jumping into it. And it can be scary, especially when you're standing in front of somebody, say a potential customer, that knows everything about that piece of equipment.
Right.
And you're trying to deliver some information to them. It can be intimidating, but that's part of the growth process. And I think also what'll really help people in the future when they're interested in this field is being able to say, hey, we have these programs or this training available to give you, say, more of a foundation than they may have, so you can have those conversations and build those relationships with people.
Yep. Well, I think too, as a sales strategy almost, and I don't want to necessarily show my cards, but people really like being asked and letting them be the leader. So if I don't know, or if I feel like I'm not going to be able to speak on something that this person probably knows a lot more about, I'm just open and genuine and honest with them. And I say, hey, how about you take me through and you tell me what you have going on? Like, I'll let you be the educator here. And then I'll try to like jump in at things that I can connect that might help you, or that I can go back and look up and look into and bring other ideas to the table for future meetings. And people really like that. They enjoy taking me through and showing me and explaining things. And so I feel like that's really helped me as well.
I think it's a great way to learn about, well, say in a sales capacity, or it could be anything, it could be education, different things like that, is listening more than talking. And when you mentioned that, I thought of a trip one time I made to a dealership, and I had this particular Dodge Ram 3500 in mind that I wanted, and the sales rep was telling me all about it, but he didn't ask what I was interested in or what I needed, and it just kind of turned me off to the process first. When I went to the next one, the guy's like, well, what color do you want? How are you going to use this? When do you want to get it? And it totally changed the buying process. And that's just one example I think all truck owners can identify with, but that also applies to trading, a new career, a new industry, lots of different things.
Yes. Well, and then to answer the first part of your question, Rotella has done a good job with their branding and aligning themselves with the consumer directly. And so with the single truck owner or with the fleet owner, and I think, they know that they have a long-standing brand that has had some success over the years. They have that name that carries them, and they have taken full advantage of that to jump on marketing strategy to say, let's keep this rolling, and we want to stay on top of the market. And so therefore, we're going to just go directly to our customers, and we want to showcase them. They used to do the whole, million mile promotions where they were talking to just regular truck owners that had trucks that were well over 1 million miles that had run Rotella through their life, and featuring them and showcasing how awesome that was, and how proper maintenance and a good product can carry you through, and highlighting the truckers, like trucker appreciation, highlighting the farmers, highlighting construction. Now they're doing a little bit of a better job. And then they've finally figured out that social media is where it's at, and that's where we're going. And so aligning themselves with some influencers, and hopefully working with more people like yourself to help just increase that exposure. And people seem to trust other people, and will back someone that they can follow in their story. And if they're promoting Rotella, they're going to be a lot more comfortable going and switching to that brand than they would with just walking up to a shelf and looking at the jugs and saying, okay, this one. So I feel like I'm happy that they're getting that. I'm actually working on some fun things behind the scenes with them, trying to get them to carry that idea over to the construction side of the world. Because it's funny, Rotella, the marketing channels at Shell are very segmented. So the Rotella branding is really trucker focused. And I'm trying to get them to see that they're missing out on this whole world of construction professionals and like fleet managers and things like that, or mixed fleets that they need to be marketing to on social media. And so I'm bringing them some fun ideas that I think are going to take off here in the next few months to do that. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
It does, and that's another really good point that you made, because when I go into an auto parts store, or really any sort of retail brick and mortar, and I see all these brands in front of me, it's totally different when I've either seen that company post something, or I've heard a podcast or watched a YouTube video, or I've seen a commercial, or I've seen something with it. It connects me to the brand in a different way, rather than just hoping that on this wall and sea of bottles that I happen to pick this one brand. And that's really interesting about that. One of the topics on the podcast, of all the things that we cover, I used to think that the most kind of controversial one would be, do you like Ford, GM, or Ram? And it's not. It's about oil brands and oil types. And it's been the hardest thing for me to adjust to, because in the past, I just thought oil was oil, and I've learned that it's not. But that's how I used to think about it. And then now when I say, hey, guys, what kind of questions should I ask, Wendy on the podcast, or what do you guys want to know? Like, there was one guy that said, I am only going to run Rotella. It's what I've run in like however many trucks I've had. You're not going to convince me to run anything else. I don't want to hear from anyone else. And it's so passionate, and so it's such a loyal fan base, that I can see how it would also connect to like the agriculture and the construction side, because if a guy has a Ram or a Ford Power Stroke or a Duramax, he's got a fleet of them, is he really going to run something different for his equipment or on the farm? No, they're going to try to line it all up and use the same brand. So I can see how that all fits together.
Yep, for sure. And isn't that funny? And I love those people, right? And I can appreciate them too, even if they're loyal to another brand for a lifetime. It's like, okay, because if I had you as a customer, you're the customer I want. So I appreciate that you're being that loyal. As much as it hurts me, it's not Rotella, but you also get the people who, and I just experienced this recently, who will comment on something, who are like, if that's the same product that it was 20 years ago, well, then it's just crap and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, if you think maybe it was, it's beyond my timeline, but maybe it was bumpy at the start. But if you think there's any chance that it could maintain its branding and presence, and Rotella's been the #1 engine oil for 8-9 years running now, a good product, a product's got to be really quality to maintain that status and be as successful as it is. And so if you think along those terms, and if that's your logic, then I'm just sorry for you. Like,
Well,
so
there's a lot of change throughout a product line. I'll see that with truck parts and different things. Somebody will say, "Well, I saw that 15 years ago, and I'm not going to use it." But the companies evolve and they get better, and
mhm.
they they keep up with the market. Well, the successful ones do. And so there's always those constant changes and constant updates. And I know from a few other podcasts, like with oil, it seems like it changes all the time when emission standards change for the on-road stuff. There's constant updates that are being done to meet the specifications. And I had a question for you. One of our listeners had asked me, and he's like, I love Rotella. I I want to run it in my truck, but I haven't been able to find it at this place he went to, and I don't know what region he was in. But I wanted to ask you about the last year or couple
Mhm.
years with supply chain and being able to meet the demand or just keep it in these places people look for it. What's that been like on the manufacturer side, the shell side?
That's tough, right? I actually had to come out and do a video about this, like I think it was in January or February, and address a lot of these why this is happening, right? Because I mean, we've all of our industries have just been put through the ringer in the last year plus. But with the oil specifically, it was like every corner we would turn, there was a new problem popping up. And it all started, I think COVID was the real start to most of this, but for our industry specifically, we had that big freeze, the unexpected freeze in Texas last winter. And because of that, everything had to shut down. Literally every chemical plant, every refinery, every DEF plant, you name it. They had to replace every pipe on every single facility that was exterior, that was
Wow.
exposed to that, whether or not it had, signs of damage, because they have to be sure that the integrity of all that equipment is up to par. And so that was detrimental to the industry as a whole. And it took a good, it's not just, and this is where people, like with politics too, with all the fuel stuff that's going on, and I don't speak to fuel at all, but they all kind of tie together, right? People just think that you can flip a switch and supply is just going to be there and turn on all of a sudden, and it's not that easy. It is such a drawn out process. It's a heavily regulated process, and all the testing, the rigorous testing that has to go into these things. And so plus all the red tape and politics that these companies have to deal with. But so it took a good 9 months at least for the industry to at least somewhat recover from that freeze that happened. Then you had the backup of COVID shutdowns on top of that. Then you started to see major shortages in other areas of the industry. So the plastic resin industry, there's only one or two major suppliers, and they're not in the US. And so to get the resins over here to make your poly drums, tanks, totes to put product in. So, okay, so now we've got product, but we have nothing to put it in. Same thing happened to steel drums. Steel had a huge issue for a while, and it might still be happening. I've been away from the distributor for a little bit now, so I'm not so privy to things, but we couldn't get drums to put the product in. And then if you had product and drums and things like that, you couldn't get a truck. You couldn't get a transport truck or a carrier because there's such a driver shortage or such an issue with that now I can't get it from point A to point B. We had a cardboard and glue shortage. So your case goods, the gallon jugs, okay, we've got our gallon jug. We had label shortages for a while too. We couldn't put labels on anything. But now we've got our gallon jug, but we got no boxes to put them in to send them to the stores, to put them on a pallet and get them out there. The grease to cardboard and plastics, not to mention the huge grease shortage issue that's happening in the country. But so it was like all these things, every corner that we would turn, there was some sort of just major issue that was preventing us from fulfilling our supply. And now the biggest issue, I think now that has impacted really the diesel industry, I would say, was one of the worst affected. So all of the major diesel engine oil brands had major shortages. All of your like EP, extreme pressure gear oils, are still really struggling. All of your industrial greases and heavy duty greases are still struggling. So it's really the main core products that the diesel industry uses have had the worst impact, and then a little bit of industrial stuff. But so now our issue is there's one or two major additive manufacturers in the US that all of the companies send their recipe to get made to put into their products. And so those companies, many of these companies are declaring force majeure throughout this process because of COVID, going bankrupt, closing. So you get these two main companies that are just so backed up that they can't keep up. So you have a huge wait time to get your product on the line. And that's really what affected ROTELLA. But Shell did, where I think Shell will pull ahead here, is they did pivot. They aligned themselves with a new additive manufacturer halfway through the year to get around a lot of this. And but the issue when you do that and you're a major brand like a Shell, a Chevron, a Mobil, you have a lot of OEM approvals tied to your products. So your products have to be extremely consistent from batch to batch every time that they're made to live up to those OEM approvals. And when you switch an additive manufacturer, if you switch a base oil supplier, which is very few and far between because these contracts are so massive and long-standing because they have to be consistent, they have to go through every OEM's testing for reapproval. So that just adds a huge amount of time to now bringing the supply back because we switched additive suppliers. So now we have to get all of Allison's approvals, all of Mac's approvals, all of Detroit's approvals, all of Cummins' approvals all over again and make sure that they are good with this switch. And this, it's not, the product didn't change. It's the same recipe. It's just because it's a new company providing the service, it has to be tested again. And so we've gone through that. And now we are back in full production, but it just takes a while to catch up. I know on the bulk side, so talking with my distributors and my former employers, they are getting bulk product in. So bulk T4 1540, 1030, T6 540, they are getting it, not as much as they would like, but they are restocking their stores. But the case goods are really, really lagging behind. And that takes a long time because now you have to get time on a packaging line, right, to get everything bottled up and get out there. And it is coming back. It's just a slow, fun process. And so I'm on behalf of Shell and ROTELLA, I'm so sorry for this delay. I know this was felt across all the brands, but we appreciate your loyalty and understand that even if you had to go somewhere else and get a different product for a while, we hope you're going to come back to us and everything will return, provided that the railroads don't go on strike and provided that the world continues to normalize a little bit.
Yeah.
We will see things come back, and it's just very slow.
And that makes a lot of sense. And I think, like I had mentioned before, going into a store and I see this wall of product, all I know as a truck owner is, well, I don't see that there, or there's less choices, but I don't know why. So that explanation makes a lot of sense to me because I've seen it in other things. Even rental cars. Somebody I knew tried to rent a car the other day, and it was like, the last time I rented one was years ago, and you could just pick whatever you want from any brand you wanted. They would come and pick you up, or you just walk right in, where now it's like you got to get on a list to rent a car. And it's something I think that we're all have gotten somewhat familiar to. But I appreciate you answering that question because he loves ROTELLA and that's what he wants to run. And I know a lot of our listeners will understand. They'll be like, okay, I see things are kind of getting back to the way they were. And even I guess even if you find it in a store, just buy it for your next oil change. Just
stock up, right?
Stock up.
Get for your friends, definitely. Or another option that people don't think about is you don't have to be a business entity to buy from a distributor. So if you can find, and I have a link on all my socials on a distributor finder page that's local to you, you can go directly to them and set up an account with them and buy from them. You don't have to go to, we want you, obviously we have deals with all of our storefronts as well. And of course we want you to buy from them. But if you can't, A lot of the times the distributors will get priority because they're doing such a large quantity and servicing so many different businesses and accounts that they will be able to, if they're getting it in bulk, they can package it in a pail for you a lot of times if there's not a pail shortage, but they can throw it in there and sell it to you that way. And a lot of times you'll get a better price point if you go through a distributor too, because they have that special pricing. And so it's just something for people to think about. It's another avenue to get the product if they are really wanting to and needing to.
That's a really interesting point, because in the diesel truck parts kind of side, it doesn't work like that. Like if you call a distributor, they want to see your tax ID, they want your business name, and they won't sell to you. I don't even know if they'll talk to you. I mean, I'm sure they would, but they're not gonna be able to assist you. So that's a really good point that you made about that. If somebody has a need for it, being able to use that avenue. So I appreciate you mentioning that, because I didn't know that. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah. They might put you through a few hoops because they're trying to make sure that their customers get product first.
Yeah.
If they're going about things in a good way, but they shouldn't, from my experience, if you're going to pay right now with a credit card or you're going to write a check, they're not going to take cash. But if you're going to write a check or pay them a credit card right on the spot, they're going to sell it to you. But if you want them to invoice you or have credit terms and you're not a business, then they're going to kind of be, I don't know about this, but
that makes sense.
Yep.
I wanted to ask you about something else, and it kind of ties into the beginning part of the podcast, but then also your last one, is we had talked about the crew collab, and then on the truck side of it, I've had so many guests over the last year or 2 years that have talked about wanting to attract people into their shop or their businesses or their manufacturing facility that are interested in automotive or interested in whatever part or service is going to be done. And you work on something in the oil industry that is really cool. And for people who didn't catch our last episode but are listening now, could you explain to us what you guys do, what the goal is, and just give us some insights into it?
Well, we're new still. I still consider us new. We're like a startup almost. We are a non-for-profit 501c3. Really, what it is it's a bunch of people like myself who are in some varying capacity of the trades world, right? Like I'm not the actual blue collar worker, but I consider myself a supporting role. I'm supporting all of these different facets of the trades industries. And I've loved it. And I've watched my customers, my mom and pop customers, all the way up to the big guys struggle with talent retention and hiring and having major shortages and staffing and struggling with that over the years. And I myself, right, like in my story, the first episode, I told you that I went to a 4-year university, acquired a ton of debt, didn't use my degree, didn't know what I was doing, fell into this industry. For my first 3 roles, I didn't need a degree. And was sitting there going, man, now I'm exposed to all these different careers that I had no idea existed. And there's all these other paths I could have taken. And I know everything happens for a reason, right? And I'm thankful for where I am today. But if I would have known that there was other routes where I didn't have to acquire a ton of debt, I could have entered the job force market earlier on. So it's a bunch of people like myself in varying capacities of the trades world who met over Instagram, social media, and said, we're all seeing this impact the industries in different ways. And we all love the industry and what we do. How can we create some sort of a solution to help expose either the next generation or people who maybe are not fulfilled in their current career in say, corporate America or whatever they're doing, that want to change, or transitioning veterans who are coming back and don't know what to do now that they're getting out of the service. Show them that there's all of these awesome jobs and careers that are well paid, very fulfilling. It's the last industry that I feel like you can start at the very bottom and work your way all the way to the top. And I have so many examples of this. I just talked to somebody on Wednesday who's now principal owner of a dealer group who started at 14, sweeping the shop floors. And so we started this group, Crew Collaborative, and we have a lot of goals, right? But we started out with 3 different facets of it. So we have our ambassador program, our classroom talks program, and then we have our membership avenue. We don't feel like we are far enough along and have enough value to charge for membership at this point. So membership's free. We hope you would just go sign up for it, so you can get our newsletters and things like that. But our two other programs, the Classroom Talks and the Ambassador. So Classroom Talks, we are acquiring a huge database of school officials across the country where we set up Zoom call panels with their teachers, with the classrooms. We do boys and girls clubs too. And take an hour and have 5 or 6 people come on and talk about, for 5 minutes, who they are, what they do, why they love it, how they got into it, what kind of path or education it took, roughly how much they make if they're comfortable sharing it, and just telling the kids about these jobs and showing them. And it's, we're all kind of younger too, so the kids can maybe identify and picture themselves in that role a little easier. But the feedback that we've gotten from the teachers after the fact has been like, the kids love this. The biggest thing was we had no idea these jobs existed. I thought you had to go to university. I didn't know I could pick these other avenues. These people look happy and fulfilled. They make good money. So just having that impact before they're coming, of graduation age to sign on the dotted line with whatever path they're going to take, or give them some things to think about. And then the ambassador program is, we are doing a formal training. We're having people who are currently working in the trades roles and loving it apply to become an ambassador and go through like a 6-week crash course in like professionalism, communication, how to present yourself, crew's mission and values, and how to represent us well. And then sending them out in the world to be like our boots on the ground network across the country, to go into schools, to go into companies, to help the student who comes up to us and says, hey, I'm in Nebraska, I want to be an operator, what are my options? And in Nebraska, there's a lot of different avenues for that student to take, versus here in Chicagoland, where you're pretty much, your only option is the union. And so the local ambassador can help point them to programs, schools, resources, internships, apprenticeships, things like that are available, or a mentor maybe, and help guide them along. And so we did our first run of ambassadors this summer. That was incredibly successful. And now we're looking to launch our second round this fall. So if you are interested, loving what you do, want to share your passion with the next generation and help point people in the right direction, we would love for you to apply to that, or sign up to be a panelist on our Classroom Talks, to just tell kids about what you do and why you love what you do and everything. And so that's our mission. We are the headlining non-for-profit partner, of ConExpo, coming up in March. And we'll be speaking on panels there and having a booth presence, and just really trying to increase our exposure. And we're always looking for sponsor partners and things like that, because it's expensive to do this stuff and we don't have a source of income. So we're all volunteering. Yeah, so that's it in a nutshell. I would love to talk with anybody if they want to reach out to me and are curious of how to get involved.
I really, really, really like the focus of it, because I was in that same position. Is, growing up, my parents always told me, hey, you need to go to college, you need to get a degree. So I spent high school studying and doing everything I could, and then I go to college, and I'm sitting at this, beautiful campus in Southern California, and I'm there, and it's like year 2 or 3, and I'm like, I'm wasting my time. Like, I want to get out there. I want to do something. I graduate, and then I have this piece of paper, but I don't know how I'm going to use it. So then I'm thinking, well, do I go back for another 2 years? But I really want to go out there. I really want to make money. I really want to find my career path. And I spend, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years in an industry where I'm just kind of there. I'm not really passionate about it. It's something I just did to make money, pay my bills. And at that time, nobody, at least I wasn't aware of an organization or a place or a part of the industry that said, hey, if you enjoy this, you enjoy, trucks or equipment or whatever it might be, here's a path for you. Here's where you can figure out what particular part of this industry you're going to fit into is really important. And so I identify with a lot of what you're mentioning there, with just finding, finding what your niche might be in this industry. And I think to kind of transition that to automotive is we need something like what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We need something in this side that says, if you do want to, you do need to go to college, you do need to get an engineering degree and make these parts or do something in R&D, great. But if you want to do something else, there's these other options for you so that it can pull in a larger group of people. And
Exactly.
it would have saved me a lot of time in my 20s if I would have known something like that. So I think that's really cool what you guys are doing.
And we're not exclusive, so we do support the mechanical trade path as well. We have some board members who are mechanics, maybe more on the heavy trucking or construction side, but we are open to automotive as well, and would like to help promote that as a great path. So we actually, I probably shouldn't share it. I'll share it soon on my socials and stuff. We have some fun talks with some of our sponsors that work with Case specifically. They have most of them, the OEMs that we work with for the equipment, all need mechanics. That's where they're saying we need mechanics at our dealers, and our customers who are buying our equipment need mechanics to service them in-house. And so how can we really partner with you to promote that path? And Case specifically has come out with some cool ideas about how we can showcase the mechanical side of it, the technician side of it. And so we'll be announcing some fun stuff with them in the near future for that specific path. But yeah, I love it. And it's not to say that college is the wrong path either. There's great positions within our industry that do utilize a degree. And we want to still be open to that as well. But for many of us, I think we would have been better served knowing that there are other ways and other paths to take. And so that's what we're here for.
Well, it's your story is something that there's so much insight in it, and there's a lot of things that people can take away, not even just in oil or automotive or diesel trucks, that when they're listening this can kind of be introspective and think, okay, what do I want to do? How do I get there? How do I have that vision and pursue it? Or maybe I just want to discover what kind of positions are available. So I definitely enjoyed our first chat, and it's been really cool. And congratulations to see where you've arrived and the vision you have there now. I think it's gonna be really cool to follow what you do, and keep us updated on new things that you're doing. We do follow you on social media, and I did want to ask you that for our listeners. Where can they follow what you're doing, like on Instagram? Where can they follow the crew collab and just be able to learn more, maybe ask you questions? Maybe they're a younger person, like, hey, how do I get into this, or where should I look?
So myself, I'm the oil lady, the.oil.lady on Instagram and most platforms you'll find me, but Instagram is definitely where I'm most active. I need to be better. I need to start transitioning everything over to like TikTok and all that stuff, but you can find me on all of them. But if you really want to get a fast response, go to Instagram or go to my website. It's the-oil-lady.com. And that's where I put the most, I believe, need to know oil related information and tools for everyone, to just get questions answered and things like that. That's a great resource. And that you can get in touch with me through there as well. Crew, same thing. So I promote them and tag them in a lot of my social media stuff, so you can find them through my pages, or it's gosh, I'm gonna have to look it up, but it's thecrewcollab.org, I believe, is the website. And we would love to have you get involved. You can just search Crew Collab on all the social channels to find us. And we're always answering our inboxes and things and helping. So don't hesitate to reach out if you want to be involved or have a question on what path to take.
Well, thanks for joining me today, Wendy, and answering some questions for us from our listeners and sharing more insights on the industry. And we'll have to do it again in the future and learn some more about oil. And I'll come back to you with some more oil questions.
I love
some
it.
Specific ones.
Yeah, and if people want like quick little education snippets, I started doing lunch and lubricants every Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Central Time. It's a live quick 20-minute or so broadcast where I pick a topic and I go into the need to know details and try to help people get some clarity on things within the lubricants industry. And so if they want to tune into that, they can. Otherwise, yeah, if you want to deep dive on a topic, I'd love to do that, and we can have another podcast.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kiausa.com. Use code DIESEL20 for 20% off site-wide. They've got a ton of different choices and options, no matter what your budget is, the use you might have for a knife, whether it's EDC or fishing, hunting, it's job site, around the house. They got so much cool stuff, and I've really had a good time seeing some of the gear that you guys have gotten. It's something that goes a long way to help us. If you're into that, or you're looking for some gear, the 20% off is a great way to save some money. I want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters as well. Tyler Loewen of 23 Diesel, also Kaleb. We appreciate the support of all of our Patreons. Those of you who subscribe on YouTube, the podcast apps, or Instagram, Facebook, and the creativity, the builds, the things that you guys are working on are so cool. They keep us going and keep us bringing you guys content. So we wanted to thank you for your support. Until next time, keep the shiny side up.